Hello, everybody. It is my great honor to be invited here and talk to you about what we are doing in terms of studying failure in Japan. My talk today is titled Creativity is the Solution, and keep failing for success, but avoid the unnecessary ones. I would like to discuss with you what I mean by this title through my talk. I am the vice chairman at the Association for the Study of Failure in Japan. It is a nonprofit organization that we established in the year 2002. My talk today has three parts. Why do we need to learn from failure? That is important. We do fail. Every now and then we fail. People make mistakes. But we need to do that for our development and the development of the society. And then we will look at an actual failure case that took place in Japan last year and see how we can learn from such cases. And then at the end, I would like to discuss how we can start reducing the numbers of failures that we don't want. There are failures that we need, but there are failures that we don't want. The ones that we need are something that we need for our future success. The ones that we don't want just keep repeating the same mistake over and over, and we never come up with a way to avoid them. Now, this photograph I took in year 2005. Some of you may have seen the actual one if you had a chance to go to Tokyo and visit one of the Disney attractions. This is a display at Disney Sea, and they have a castle that is displaying the history of human development in science and technology. And this particular display is a model that they created after what Leonardo da Vinci designed back in the 16th century. Leonardo da Vinci was a genius. He had created a lot of paintings, and he was famous for scribbling letters backwards in a mirror image, but he dreamt about flying. He wanted to fly. He wanted to accomplish man-powered flying. And you can see in these pictures what he was intending to do. And this is his depiction of something like a parachute today. And this is something of what turned into a helicopter in later days. However, even though he was a genius, he never succeeded. In year 1501, he announced that he is going to make a man-powered flight. And it took him 5 years to come up with this model that is shown here. But he was too old to actually fly this thing. So what happened was his number one disciple, the name was Tommaso Massini. And he took the honor. Well, whether you can call it an honor or not is something that you decide, but he mounted himself on this device and ran down the hills in Montecchieri in Italy. But he never took off. He went running down, trying to jump up, but he never succeeded in leaving the land, and he crashed at the bottom of the hill and broke his legs. This was in year 1506. About 400 years later, when we are asked who invented an airplane, people over the world would say, well, it's the Wright brothers, Wilbur and Orville Wright. That was 1903. So 400 years after Da Vinci failed, they were able to fly 59 seconds, and they floated in the air for 260 meters. Now, what is important is this one is powered. It had an engine on it. A year before their Wright Flyer, they had this thing called Wright Glider. And this is a man-operated flying object. It floated in the air for 26 seconds and flew the distance of 190 meters. So 400 years after that genius Leonardo da Vinci failed, they were succeeded in this man-powered flight. Now you look at today. After the Wright brothers, 100 years, in Japan there's this Birdman contest, and a big record was established in the year 2008 by Tohoku University. The course is laid out in Lake Biwa near Kyoto, and 18 kilometers away from the starting point is a pole where they're supposed to turn around and come back. So they flew all the way to the pole, turned around it, and came back to the starting point. And the organizer said, yes, you can stop here. And their record was 36 kilometers. There is a person here, and he's like riding a bike. He's pedaling this thing, and it has a propeller in the back with these very lightweight 2 wings. And that was the record back then. Last year, their record was broken. Well, this is a precision machining company, and they went past their record and made a 40 kilometers record. Now, this is man-powered flight. And when we look at the engine-powered flight, if you have seen the Airbus A380, that's huge. It's a 2-story airplane from the top to the very end. And its cruising distance is 15,700 kilometers. It's not quite half the way around the Earth, but it's almost there. Now, when you think about it, we today, for example, myself, last night, I took off from Tokyo, the Narita airport, and flew into Incheon. And that's only 2 hours. We get on these things and fly up, and then we can reach New York or Paris in about 12 hours or so. The reason why we can enjoy this is because Leonardo da Vinci failed trying to fly in the 16th century. If we look at the photograph that I showed you first, we know instantly, well, that thing is not going to fly, because we know what a man-powered flying object should look like. And that is because we have seen people fail, and I'm pretty sure after Leonardo da Vinci failed, there are lots of people, engineers, that tried to do the same thing but failed. And eventually, the Wright brothers made it, and then from there we kept developing. And so we need failure experience. We need failure experience to know what we have to do or what we should avoid to reach our goal. If we keep hearing about successes, we don't know where the pitfalls are. So we need to fail so that we can reach the goal quickly in today's world. Okay, so that's why we need to fail for success. But there are failures that we do not want to repeat. Now, ASCL is a is a company that that you can buy things online and they will deliver it the next day. Asu in Japanese means tomorrow, and kuru means it comes. So we make online orders and they deliver it to you the next day. They had a fire in Saitama Prefecture. I wanted to show it to you, but it's so close to Tokyo that it's almost the same dot. So you can think of it as almost Tokyo. The number, well, the dates are wrong. I made a mistake. That's a mistake. February 16. It started February 16 and completely put out February 22nd. So it burned for 6 days. They couldn't turn the fire out in their warehouse. It's a 3-story reinforced concrete warehouse, and it burned in 2017. That's last year. And there are some stats. Luckily, there was nobody that died. Only one person was seriously injured, and one person had a minor injury. Now, I want you to look at, this is something that the company that had the fire published in a press conference, and it was hard to look at, so I emphasize what they had as yellow circles. These yellow circles are fire extinguishers, and you look at them carefully. For every 10 meters, there was a fire extinguisher. So you can imagine, probably on this stage, there would be about 1, 2, 3 fire extinguishers. And this blue square, fire plugs. Fire plugs is where the firemen come and plug their hose in to shoot the water out. And for every 35 meters, there was a fire plug. And when you think about the arrangement, they're too much, they're too many. So it tells the company was very scared about fires in their warehouse. So for every 10 meters, they had a fire extinguisher. They had a sprinkler in this area because the law requires that where you have an electronics, you need to have an automatic sprinkler. So this is where they had the robots that will read the barcode and push the delivery package. Like this is Tokyo, this is Osaka, and they had that automatic robot that would do that. But there's no legal requirement to have fire sprinklers there. The causes are unknown. There are lots of rumors, but the question is, you had a fire extinguisher for every 10 minutes, and when the fire started, why couldn't they put it out? That's what a fire extinguisher is for. Talking about fire extinguishers, this is a Japanese one, and this is an American one. I studied the internet and looked at the Korean ones, and Korean fire extinguishers are very much like the American ones, so it's very natural. There's a funny story about how the hell Japan ended up with this pin that you have to pull up like that. The natural reaction for a human when they see this type of fire extinguisher is, well, you put your finger through it to carry it to where the fire is, but that's wrong. This is a safety pin, like this one. And it's natural to have a safety pin that you have to pull out sideways. The story behind why the hell Japan ended up with pins that look like that is because sometime in the history of the fire extinguisher industry, the administration decided that, oh, we have all sorts of fire pins, like ones like this, and there's ones that you would pull out from between the liver. And they said, well, we have to unify. We have to have a standard for Japan. And when we do so, we should not follow a style that a company has already have. So we have to make the standard so that it has never been used anywhere else. And so they said, oh, nobody's using this type. Well, why don't we go with this type? So fire extinguishers in Japan are very funny because they have pins that you have to pull up. And it does happen a lot that people see it for the first time, they pull it up, and they go, oh, something came off. And then because they lost something to hook their fingers around, they push this up, and then they start shooting out the powder where there is no fire. And anyway, what we learn from this fire is that following law is not sufficient. Well, the law tells you several things, but that's not enough to keep the fires away. A good preparation is insufficient. They had fire extinguishers every 10 meters. You have to prepare the people. And the people at that warehouse, did they yell fire? Did they ask for help? Did they know how to use the fire extinguisher? That is very questionable. You have to have your people think for themselves. You don't want people that are reluctant to use fire extinguishers because you would be blamed at later. So, the third part, what to do? How can we drop the numbers of failure that we experience? Well, these are very popular solutions in Japan, like raising awareness, training and education, tight control, because they sound very good. They sound like when you have a failure, you had an accident, okay, we're going to raise the awareness. We're going to train people better. We're going to have a tighter control. It sounds good, but it's not doing anything. We call them the big three in wrong actions for failure control. Why? Because they are trying to raise the awareness of people. Well, this one is itself and training. You train people so that people are more aware of what can go wrong. You give tight control because people are scared. They don't want to make mistakes, and then they will raise their awareness. But people are not robots. People are people. We are animals, so we forget things. Sometimes we are unaware or we are losing our mind. That's very natural. So that doesn't help how we should avoid failures, unwanted ones. Now, I apologize for the text that they're very hard to see, but what it is, the left side table is the world ranking of GDP, gross domestic product, per capita. And if you look at GDP itself, you know that the United States is number 1, China is number 2, and Japan is number 3. Well, of course, China has so many people living in there. And this table, by the way, is published by the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. And what you should do is divide the GDP by the number of people living in that country. If you have more people, it's very natural that the GDP is bigger, of course. If you divide it with the number of people, then it becomes a fair comparison of the wealthiness of that country. So at the top is Qatar. Of course, they have oil. And number 2 is Macau. Well, it's a question if it's a country or not, but they have the gambling facilities. And we keep going down. United States, the GDP number 1 country, is number 11. China falls all the way down to number 67 because they have so many people. Japan is 25, and South Korea is 27, so we are very close here. This table on the right, This is published by the Martin Prosperity Institute. It is a research center at the University of Toronto. And somehow they came up with this creativity index. And you look at it, Australia's at the top, United States, and go down, and Japan is here at number 24. And Korea is here at number 31. So again, we are close together. And if I plot the wealthiness of the country versus the creativity index, ignore these special points like oil-rich countries or so. There is an almost linear correlation. And the richest country in Asia is Singapore. Well, if you think about it, Singapore is a rich country. And I'm going to explode this part. And it shows all these European countries, the United States, and Japan, and South Korea. Again, we are close together. And what it means is this linear relation means that we want to be richer. We want to have more GDP per capita in our country. That means we need better creativity. And creativity is the solution of avoiding failure. Because when you want to avoid a failure, it is not the intention, it is a creative solution. Something that you didn't have before would stop the failure from happening. And this is, well, for example, the United States was way up there in terms of creativity, and it has its doors open to welcome students. And this is a graph of the number of international students in United States universities. And over the past 30 years or so, it has tripled. You look at it with different countries. Well, China, that used to have so little people, is way up here. They are sending a lot of students to the United States as well as India. The third place is Korea. And Japan is not in the fourth place. It's probably lower. And I'm going to compare the 1995 numbers and the 2015 numbers. Again, South Korea and Japan are close together. South Korea number 3, and Japan used to be number 4. That was back in 1995. If you look at 2015, Korea is way up here. It's number 2, following Saudi Arabia. And for some reason, Japan has lost interest or stopped sending students to American university to learn about what their education is. There's lots of creativity education in the US. And I use this table to warn people in Japan that we should learn more. We should keep studying and studying. And you look at the products now in the market and you compare them. Well, Galaxy had some problems in the past, but I think Samsung has very good products that would tickle the minds of the people. And in terms of creating, there is this TED.com. You can see it on the internet. This is the mostly viewed talk by Ken Robinson in the UK. And this guy, David Kelly, he's a professor at Stanford. And they talk about how educational systems have taken away creativity from people. And if you have a chance, I would recommend that you look at these. They are very encouraging to people. And as you know, Japan, after war, we worked very hard. However, we only worked in terms of technology, engineering, and production technology. And we became a technical giant. However, we did not put much efforts in creativity. If we think about it, we tended to take creativity away from people, I would say. What we need to do is build creativity in ourselves so that we can reach where superb countries are up there. For one thing, repetitive work will be gone in the future. Also, what we thought it was a skilled work is no longer around. The machines are taking it away from us. And what they say now is, if you give the symptoms of a patient to an AI computer, the odds for that AI making the right decision is higher than the average doctor. And as you know, there is a movement to go to automatic driving. What machines cannot do? They can replace most of what people can do, but they cannot replace sports. They cannot replace performance. Of course, machines can do that. We can see robot contests that are, throwing balls around and counting the number of balls. But we watch them because it's fun to see the people that are operating the machines behind them. We're not interested in the machine themselves. So, creative works will remain, but the uncreative works will be gone. So that's why we need to start educating ourselves. I teach classes at some of the schools in Japan, and I collect these schools and have the students, they form groups to come up with a creative idea, a new design. This is the one that won last year. The guy said, well, I don't want to be holding an umbrella when it's raining, so they invented this cloud-like thing that will follow you when it's raining. And we have a contest, and we have the students compete with each other. That's part of our activity. The most recent one is we finally made it to the American Society of Mechanical Engineering Journal, precautions at Fukushima that would have suppressed the accident severity. The accident would have happened anyway, but it didn't have to release so much nuclear radiation. It did not have to evacuate the people if they had done some preparation. And to make the story short, the only preparation they had to do was assume that that tsunami was going to come and plan what to do in case that tsunami comes. So instead, there were people around them that they were saying that the tsunami was going to reach here, and they even had some national weather association give a prediction that a tsunami is going to hit. They simply said, no, the tsunami is not going to hit. They stopped thinking right there. If they had thought about it, they would have come up with things to do to avoid the radiation leakage. So that was our paper, and I believe that's the end of my talk. Thank you.